We get into some football news items, and there's a couple to get into. We'll start with the biggest one. This is the latest day of testifying, if you will, for Kain Colter and the Northwestern football players who are trying to get college football players to have a union. There's a handful of developments here. Let me just read a couple of them and then get your take on this. Kain has said this is truly a job, arguing they work 50 to 60-hour weeks, and saying things like Northwestern steered him away from pre-med. Northwestern football would not allow classes before 11 a.m. The school has set up a defense saying that scholarships come with no strings attached. Performance doesn't matter to a star, isn't paid the same as a bench warmer. That's not compensation. And Northwestern's also said the 97% graduation rate they have is highest among FBS schools, and arguing how could football be a problem. I'm curious, both of your thoughts on the latest developments from today.
Well, again, for me, it goes back to, why did this start? I can remember when the APU started with Kain Colter during the season, and then the union, because if you read the union goals, they all make sense. And I support, if not all of them, most of them, player safety. But isn't that being done? Better graduation rates. We've passed rules. Jim Delaney has proposed that an athlete has a lifetime scholarship. Injury prevention. Michigan, Penn State, when we were at practice in the fall, they were adjusting their drill so they weren't pounding each other in the head. So all the things Kain was talking about made sense to me. And I kept saying it has to be something else. It has to be based on a negative personal experience. And everybody blew me off and said that's not true. He's trying to save the world, if you will. But if you look at today's tweets, and I follow Teddy Greenstein from the Tribune, he's done a great job keeping us posted. Kain's complaining about a 60-hour work week. He's complaining about 5:30 in the morning workouts. He's saying that they had to stay in the summer. You mentioned he had to change his major, and on and on and on. I've got an entire list of it. So I don't think this is a story about a player union. I think this is a story about a player and a school.
Well, I can't disagree with that. I think when Kain begins to lay it out, it's obviously about his experience there at Northwestern. But a bunch of other players have also signed a petition to be a part of the union at Northwestern. And I think if you went across the country, I think you would find that more players would sign up because everybody's experience is different. And there are going to be a lot of players in college football who have not had a great experience. And ultimately, for me, I don't think this is about the things you laid out, because those things are being dealt with. I think this is about revenue. I think a lot of the players see a union. One of the things we hear about, I am now an employee, so that means I should now receive a wage for what I do. And ultimately, I think that's probably a part of this for Kain and other players that signed up. I think if this were to happen, if they were to unionize the players or college athletes across the board in every other sport, that completely levels the playing field and changes college football as we know it today. And it's a dangerous thing to be discussing.
Stanley, you bring up the financial package, and if that is one of their issues, and I've said this right along from the APU to this latest player union thing, there's no dynamic leadership and there's no clear vision. There's no clear message. And so if that's their message, they have to communicate that. If this is about the players getting paid, then let's talk about player stipend. Let's talk about what we can do about the Pell Grant. Let's talk about giving an athlete, which in my opinion he or she deserves, the full cost of education, meaning above rooms, book, board, and tuition, transportation back and forth to home, some money for clothes, those type of stipends, which a lot of academic scholarship recipients get. I think that's fair. But don't tell us don't lead us down one path because you want more money. Tell us you want more money, and maybe it'll be discussed. And as far as college athletes being more employees and students, which is something that was said today in court, that they're more employees than students, that is the saddest commentary I've ever heard about college athletics since I've been in college athletics.
How so?
Because if a student athlete feels more of an employee and a worker, an hourly wage or a salary employee as opposed to a student, I think that's sad. They shouldn't be on a college campus then. If they feel like they're employees, they should go and begin their life employment.
Well, let me say this. That was my thought process. I don't know that they're going after money, but when I see the big picture and things that I've been hearing since I played in football, I think that's a part of it. And I want to go on record of saying this first. Whenever you do something different, whenever you go against the grain, it takes some bravery there. It takes some courage. And I applaud Kain for his effort here because no one else has done this. But having said that, Coach, I kind of understand what he's talking about a little bit because you spend a lot of time playing football. I mean, it for me was a primary responsibility. Your scholarships are renewed every year. And so it's about you playing football. Now, I'll get the opportunity to graduate and go on and have a good life. But when you're that young and you really don't know what you want to do but play football, it's hard to say that some players don't feel like it's a full-time job, because I remember spending a lot of hours at the football facility trying to be better there. Now,
Do you really
having
think you spend
said that,
50 to 60 hours a week, though?
well, I don't know
That's
about
a
50 or
lot.
60.
That's
That's
an
a lot.
absurd
but-
statement.
That's a lot, but I remember spending a lot of time. Now, most of it was voluntary. No one forced me. There are rules, and coaches weren't around, but I wanted to get better. I loved the game of football. I wanted to play it, so I needed to watch more film. I needed to lift more weights. I needed to be in better shape. So most of the time, it is voluntary, but there's still a lot of time because you always have the next best guy behind you. I had to deal with Joe Germain. He's a sharpshooter. So I had to stay on top of it, and I had to spend a lot of time at my craft of football. And sometimes, I'm going to be very honest here, it came in the way when it came to your academics. And so I think that's a part of it. I don't know that they're going after this for money. That's what I'm speculating. That's what I believe, because we hear a lot about that. But I think it's definitely a part of it.
If Kain Colter says they spend 60 hours a week, the rule says 20, to spend 3 times as much as the rule states, and for the coaches not to be aware of that, that's impossible. Because as you say, you go watch tape. So how can I coach a team? How can I coach a kid, be in the football facility, and not realize he's spending 3 times the allowable amount? So he's either exaggerating, or coaches are not noticing what's going on, or maybe the coaches aren't in the office, and I find that very hard to believe. So I think the 50 to 60 hours in all places I've coached, I think that's an exaggeration. I don't believe that's true. And he's complaining about he had to pay for his own MRI. Nowhere in the country do you have to do that. And I'm not even suggesting Northwestern does, because I guess they have disputed that claim. But have you ever heard of an athlete paying for their own MRI?
No, typically when I was in school, you were either on your parents' insurance or it was taken care of by the school. So typically your parents' insurance will take care of any medical bill you have. But, Coach, he may be over-exaggerating about 50 or 60, but I got to say, I spent a lot of time at our athletic facility. And I'm going to say it again, it was mostly voluntary. No one forced me to do that. I wanted to get better. So I think that's a part of the equation here. But at the end of the day, I think for most of us, if you're not really a freak, if you're not really special, you got to spend a lot of time in your craft. There's a lot of pressure, there's a big stage, and there's a lot at stake.
When I went to college, I felt like I had a job too. I never thought my scholarship was a free education. I felt like I couldn't have gotten into Notre Dame without football. Kain admitted today he couldn't have gotten into Northwestern without football. So we all know that you're non-ordinarily admissible, you get admitted, and that's an advantage and a benefit. But I did feel my job was to play, but I felt I was being compensated for it very fairly. I didn't feel like I needed anything more than being admitted at a great school and being able to play at a great school.
It's such a fascinating double-edged sword that Kain Colter is the guy who does this, because he's so successful and well-spoken and has done a great job with his education. That makes him able to have the courage and to do these things and to be a good face. It also buys the argument of, really? I mean, how could football be so bad if you're able to be such an example of the good side that can come from having an education, from playing this?